We want to talk a little bit more about what happened in Nevada, and I encourage you to go to his YouTube video and take a look at how he explained it in great details, and he shares a lot of links so that you can see it for yourself. So I'm joined by Dan. Dan, how are you today?
I'm great, thank you. How's the sound?
Oh, your sound is fine. I'm gonna push your levels up just a little bit. So, but you're quite all right. Listen, thanks so much for joining me. First of all, thank you for that video that you put out, and thank you for your. I don't know if it was intentional journalism, but it was definitely journalism and helping people to understand what transpired. So I'm sure I gave them a background of it, and I'm sure a lot of people have done some research. But if you could just give us a quick summary of why people are angry, because I think that's where we are right now. Is they're trying to cast this as people just being spoiled and having sour grapes for losing, and that's really not the animus that came out of it. There was really some other things that happened that made people so furious. So if you want to give me a brief summary of what happened and particularly why so many people are angry about this, we would greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think let's start out by sort of acknowledging what some have already stated. And I think, the truth of the matter is we're all really intelligent people. As angry as everyone is, we want to make sure that we know that we can't encourage any sort of acts of violence, even though everyone is very, very angry. What it does is it takes away from the message that we're trying to spread, which is a very simple concept. We have a country which is supposed to be built on this very beautiful concept of one person, one vote. And so, what happened, again, the interesting thing about Saturday's events is that many of us had actually been saying for several weeks before the convention that none of this had to happen. But to give you a little bit of a preview, Nevada is a caucus state. It's my hope that it won't remain a caucus state after the events of Saturday. But caucuses are a little bit confusing. They're based on this whole idea that you get with your neighbors, you talk about the issues, you talk about your candidates, and then you break up into different sides of the room. You count the people on the sides of the room, and you award national delegates in that order. Now, it's my opinion that what happened at the Clark County Convention, for those of you who want to do your own research, what happened at the Clark County Convention was, although Hillary Clinton won the majority of delegates in the county convention, more Bernie Sanders supporters showed up, and he ultimately took more of the delegates. Now, again, the travesty there is that was a really amazing moment in political history that really didn't show up anywhere. I know you talked about it. But it really didn't show up. I think that's where the anger started to brew, because people at that event said, wow, this amazing thing happened, but none of the mainstream media is covering it. So, flash forward to a couple of weeks before the convention, Roberta Lang, who's the head of the the Nevada State Democratic Party, and a group of what's called the E-Board, or the Executive Board, held a meeting to sort of put in place rules for the state convention, which was held at the Paris Hotel and Casino on Saturday the 14th. Those rules essentially gave Roberta and a few members of that board exclusive control over the convention. And it also allowed her to unanimously appoint who would decide if a delegate was a legitimate delegate to attend the convention. And unfortunately, what happened is once that came to light, people got very disturbed about the fact that so many rules were put in place. Rules like motions would not be allowed from the floor. We would not be able to challenge the ruling of the chair. The whole idea of the caucus system is that as a group, you gather together and you speak your voice. In the rules that were established, unfortunately, for the state convention, that simply didn't happen. Now, a group of really great people tried to establish and challenge that by taking it to court. And that was led by a great woman named Angie Morelli and a lawyer, Rob Kern, who did some very, very hard work to protect democracy in our country. They filed a suit which went to court the day before the convention. Unfortunately, the judge determined, I'm not going to get involved in party politics, because the sad reality, Benjamin, is that the state parties are essentially, for private institutions. And especially in a caucus, they are not allowed to have really any state intervention. So, flash forward, they tried to get that overturned at the court level. That was denied. Then, according to the rules of, and really long-standing rules of parliamentary procedure, Angie and her group got a ton of signatures to actually challenge those rules. And so basically what happened is there were temporary rules for the convention. The body at the state convention essentially votes those in, right, and they become the permanent rules. So what Roberta did was she motioned for that to be heard. And in spite of having attained all of the right number of signatures for several petitions and several motions, she went ahead and moved those into order. Right. And, I'm paraphrasing here, but essentially the phrase she used when she did that was, the chair's ruling cannot be debated and cannot be overturned. Yeah. Absolute, really, truly absolute breakdown of order happened right there. People got really, really upset. Yeah. Big high five to Senator Turner, who was there and who really brought us back to the reality of the situation, which is ultimately we're all just working for democracy. So, I know that Nina Turner has done so much great work for the Sanders movement, and I can't really understate or overstate, I guess I can't overstate how much great work she did at the convention. And that was, I guess, point one, where the shenanigans of the convention could have gone to rest. And fortunately, they didn't.
And that's the big thing. Let me jump in there really quickly. That's the thing that I think bothers a lot of people so much about this, Dan, is that there's so many points where this could have gone right. Even if the outcome did not go the way that people wanted, it could have turned right, but it turned for the worse. So go ahead, give me a little bit more. And just a note to the audience, Nina Turner actually has connected with me via Skype. So we're going to get her on and we're going to talk to her. She's going to put a little more about the story on this. So I want you guys to thank you so much for tuning in, first of all, and thank you for Dan for unpacking the complexities of this, because like you said when you first started, it's complicated and it's easy to get lost in. So go ahead, finish telling me what happened, and let's go from there.
Yeah, you stated something that really should not go unsaid, which is, in the reality, in order to enact the new rules, which some of the dissenting groups wanted to enact, I'm going to be very honest with you, there probably were not enough votes on the floor to actually make that happen. And I'm very confident that Roberta and the board knew that at the time. So if that motion had simply been allowed to be heard, I don't believe, unfortunately, that there were enough votes on the floor to pass it, because the reality to change it requires 2/3 of a vote. So anyways, let's keep talking about some of the other things that happened. We held what was essentially a preliminary count of the delegates after everyone had gotten put in place. Now, and I can forward you the exact numbers. I apologize, I don't have them right in front of me. But essentially, Clinton wins by 20 to 30 delegates. Right, she wins by a very small number compared to the 3,000 people that were in the room. What's important about that is we know that 64 people were denied their credentials. The majority of those people were Sanders supporters. They were not allowed to caucus for Sanders at the event. What people aren't talking about is there's probably several hundred more who didn't attend. Number one, because the Democratic Party sent out what is, in my opinion, sham email, which basically said, hey, if you want to come to the convention, you need to pay $35. And there's, quite frankly, people who don't have money. They don't have the money. Now, they're legally allowed to do that, but the way that they did it, I feel, is very unethical. And then additionally, I'll be honest, I had to look for parking for an hour. I got there early, but it took me an hour to get there. If somebody who maybe worked a second job or something like that was trying to get there, even if they tried to get there an hour early, it would have been very difficult for them to find parking. And there's certainly no signs at the convention center saying, parking lot's full. So we absolutely know that a lot of delegates, and I believe probably on both sides, didn't get in the convention because we weren't paying close enough attention. We weren't organizing the convention well enough. So we have this preliminary count of the delegates. Clinton wins by 30 delegates. Yeah. It is brought to our attention that there is what is known as a minority report, which would essentially be sent to the group and then essentially goes to the DNC. Roberta literally tried to pull the microphone away from the individual who tried to deliver that minority report. You can see it on the video. It's a very tense moment. Now, fortunately, someone from the DNC actually did step in and did deliver that report. So it is on record. It will be forwarded to the DNC. I think we know by now, after what we've seen in multiple states, it's very unlikely that there's going to be any change there. So that was another huge moment of contention. It was the first moment where I attempted to call a point of order, which is standard parliamentary procedure, to have a no confidence vote for Roberta Lang and to remove her as chair and as presiding member of the convention. I was not given access to a microphone to do that, so I did it with a megaphone. And I was threatened with arrest, and my megaphone was taken away. I mean, I get it. If you're a scholar, you can probably tell us that that's not allowed. But I can promise you at that point that the majority of convention attendees had enough of the shenanigans. Absolutely. So then let's fast forward to what happens next. We vote for some top party spots, some spots for things like national delegate, DNC chair, for example, and we break out into rooms for congressional district. At that point in the day, and we're going to try to get some of this up eventually, at that point in the day, people were so angry with the process, but they were also very angry with each other, which I think is just a huge tragedy. I was in the CD4 breakout, and literally people were yelling obscenities. Clinton people were yelling at Sanders people were yelling at Clinton people. And it was really a breakdown in democracy. It was a breakdown in the system that's supposed to be there. And it was really sad to watch. So then we move forward to, what's essentially the close of the evening. What happened is the group began to prepare to both announce and vote for the national delegates for Sanders and Clinton and to close out the party process. At one opportunity, the board and those presiding attempted to motion for the party platform, which is very standard procedure at a Democratic Party. A couple of people dissented, a couple of people approved, also standard procedure. I once again tried to use that moment to disavow the platform in its entirety. I did have the opportunity to say that. But then B, I attempted to call both a point of order and a motion to once again vote for no confidence in Roberta Lang. But my microphone was literally cut off. Literally cut off. And that sort of silencing of the process is outrageous. And if you watch it, you can see people are just literally, they can't believe it. And I'm not the only one at that day that had their microphone cut off. And I think it is a sad state of affairs for the party. So we're there. None of those motions are properly heard. None of them are properly voted on. And then, essentially Lang is at a point with the rest of the board where she needs to call the convention to order. I don't have confirmation, but it is my understanding based on several reports that the Paris Hotel said, we can't, you guys have to go. Right. We cannot guarantee security. I don't have confirmation of that, but I can tell you that from a business standpoint was a good call, and it was a call I would have made. So essentially then what happens is as they're preparing to announce the final count of the delegates, one more attempt is made in several different fashions to ask for a recount of the delegates. Roberta takes that opportunity to quickly motion and end the convention, as well as to decide on plios, which are party leaderships, basically at a later time. She does that, slams the gavel, and then kind of angrily runs off stage. It's really a shame to watch. And then what is most disturbing and what really concerns me as a Democrat is the entire stage was flanked with Las Vegas Metro police officers. It was an image that was completely uncalled for. And I think, people are upset. I personally did not see any acts of violence at the convention myself. I know that there were things like vandalism, and there may have been some fistfights. Anytime you get 3,000 people in a room, there's going to be upset people. Certainly we don't condone physical violence, but, I have already heard the parties start to cast this as, the narrative being this is just a bunch of angry, violent people. For example, they shut down the office, the Democratic Party office. They shut it down today. They've not announced it when they're going to open up. That really troubles me because I think that it's an attempt to really shun and change the narrative. I will tell you, as someone who's running for Congress, when you put yourself in the public light, you're going to get scrutiny. You're going to get things like threats. I myself have been threatened. My family's been threatened. There are processes to protect anyone, and those processes should be there for the Democratic Party.
Let me jump in there, Dan, because you're hitting on a whole lot of things that I think is very key to the last thing that you said is so critical, that it's the not only the results, but it's the appearance of how this panned out that's making this super troubling. And I think that the way that the party nationally and locally there in Nevada is just dismissing this as though it was just bad actors, and casting you all as irrational actors, is something that's adding the insult to injury. And I really, and we're running short on time here, so I want to ask you to quickly tell us what is the next move. And yeah, just let's start there. What's the next move?
I'm happy that you asked that question. I think, and I want to close in saying that without question, it is my opinion that those acting at the convention put in jeopardy Nevada's status as a potential blue state in November, without a doubt.
Wow.
What's next? I'm happy to announce exclusively on your show today. I have drafted and sent electronically and via U.S. postal mail a letter to Senator Harry Reid, to Councilman Schultz, and to Governor Brian Sandoval, demanding the resignation of Roberta Lang as chair of the Nevada Democratic Party.
Absolutely.
I am asking anyone who supports that movement to go ahead and also write to those three people, and to really anyone that you want to. There is already a petition, and I can get you that information on whitehouse.gov, I believe, that is asking for an investigation. So sign that if you're interested. Certainly a little bit of self-promotion. Check out my website. It's letsgonevada.com.
Yeah.
I'd like to remind my constituents that I was the only congressional candidate at that event that stood with the people that night. And I think we are at a point in democracy where we have to start acting in some of these civilly disobedient ways. We have to. One of the examples that I often talk about is we have a crisis in education. If we can get every 18-year-old who's about to go to college to take off one semester and do something great for their community, we can bring that corrupt institution to its knees. Absolutely. And things like that are things that we can do all across the country that can have peaceful results and that can also do a lot of good. At the end of the day, everyone there that was upset, I truly believe the vast majority really just wanted to be heard, and they want to make a difference. And I think that so many of those people unfortunately walked away feeling like they're not going to be involved in the process anymore. So my work is to reach out to those people and get them excited again.
Dan, listen, I thank you so much for taking the time to come on to be with us. And actually, I'm all about self-promotion. So send me your link to your website and your Twitter handle. I want to retweet it to my entire audience. Thank you for coming on and unpacking that for us. Thanks
very much. Have a nice night.
Thank you. You too. All right, folks, thank you all so much for your patience. Thank you for listening in so far. Dan, I really want to appreciate you for coming on and unpacking that for us.